Welcome to Mock 10 Sports. I hope you had a great fall Labor Day weekend. We got a treat for you today. A great guest. Think he fits the bill. Just has a knowledge of the SEC, a real feel for the South Carolina program as we're getting close to that date for this weekend in Fayetteville. We got 247 analyst here with us, Brad Crawford. Brad, I appreciate you joining us today, bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
No problem. So just as we get in here, let's get into it real fast. Give me some of your week one thoughts.
Yeah, week one thoughts. Anthony Richardson is who we thought he was. Florida quarterback, had about 150 on the ground. I think he had 125 or so through the air. Beat a very good Utah team that I think can win 10, maybe 11 games out west this season. Florida was definitely a week one winner for me. I think Georgia, really opened a can on Oregon. I didn't think that game would be close, but, man, Georgia has 7 new starters on defense. All them guys played lights out. I thought Stetson Bennett, after week one, should be the Heisman front runner. Really executed that game plan to near perfection against the Ducks. So Florida and Georgia, those are my 2 week one winners from the SEC.
Gotcha. So who you answered my next question. We're buying stock with Florida and Georgia. Who would you say you're staying away from? The jury's still a little out for Brad.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss was sort of a mid-tier SEC program coming into this season. In my opinion, I know they were top 25. I did not have them there. I need to see more from Jackson Dart and Luke Altmaier, and I think Lane Kiffin does too. He said after the game that Luke Altmaier is going to start this Saturday's game, another home game for Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is home the first 5 weeks of the season. So the good news for the Rebels is they're going to have time to kind of work out these kinks offensively. I think the loss of Jeff Lebby to Oklahoma, the play caller there, cannot be understated. That was a huge loss, and from what I saw out of Ole Miss on Saturday, they had to rely on the run a whole lot more than I thought they would. I think Zach Evans had 130 or so on the ground. So, not the feared high tempo, up tempo passing attack that I expected out of the Ole Miss Rebels.
So what's your thoughts on that? Right now we're talking about it. I know they played Jackson Dart a lot against Troy, playing Luke Altmaier, giving him the start against UCA this week. Do you like that? Or you kind of, with the schedule easing in, you like Jackson Dart to roll in, get accustomed, preparing as each week goes by until they get to week 6, 7, probably until they really, I feel like they get their first challenge?
Yeah, hopefully Ole Miss, if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I would hope that, the first quarter of the season, Lane Kiffin names his starter and kind of picks a guy and goes with him. This is very similar, man, to what Jim Harbaugh right now is doing at Michigan. He likes Cade McNamara. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy is a former 5-star recruit. Fans like him a lot. Luke Altmaier has more experience than Jackson Dart and really knows how to run that Ole Miss offense. But you almost feel like Lane Kiffin had to play Jackson Dart in that season opener. He was the prize recruit from USC out of the transfer portal. So even though Ole Miss's roster is transfer heavy, that Ole Miss offense goes through quarterback play. And Luke or Jackson really has to take that position by the reins, I think, for Ole Miss to be a 9 or 10 win team like they were last season.
No, absolutely. I agree with you on that. Moving to this week, I asked you some questions about week one. What game, besides the obvious we got you on here, South Carolina, Arkansas, besides that one in conference, give me a game or two you're looking forward to this week?
Yeah, I think Tennessee at Pitt's very good game. Obviously, Alabama at Texas is one that I'm going to be watching at noon, kind of split screening that with Gamecocks and Razorbacks. But Bama, Texas to me is, I said it earlier this afternoon, that's my lock of the week. I don't see how Bama, fails to cover 20 points in that game. Texas O-line's brand new, has a couple freshman starters up there. Quinn Ewers, second career start at quarterback for the Longhorns, and he's going to face arguably the best defense in college football. And in that secondary, man, for Bama, Kool-Aid McKinstry at corner, Eli Ricks the other corner, Jordan Battle playing center field out there. That's a tough matchup for Texas. And I think unless Bijan Robinson's able to get, 4.5 to 5 yards of carry and kind of keep Alabama's defensive front at bay, that's going to be a long afternoon for Quinn Ewers. So I like Alabama in that game. It's a very big spot for Texas, though. And, Nick Saban kind of alluded to it this week. I think Steve Sarkisian knows that Alabama has better players in this game, which is what Dan Lanning saw Saturday in Atlanta when Kirby came to town.
Absolutely. No, going back and watching some of the Alabama game last night, you do like the physicality of the defense. They feel like they kind of got an edge to them this year, and they're a lot more physical than you've seen of their defenses in the past. I mean, that from their own standard, right? From what I mean by that, it's just you feel like the only thing Utah State really got them on is a little bit misdirection and some jet sweeps. Maybe Texas tries to get out to the edge there because they're not just going to run right at Alabama. But you're right. It'll be interesting. So again, some familiarity, but as we saw this past weekend with Georgia and Oregon, familiarity out the door, man. It really does not matter if your X is better than their O. That's all that matters.
And the good news for Texas is Xavier Worthy is better than anybody Utah State had on the field last week. Yeah. I think one of the issues that I saw in that Bama game, despite it being 55-0, was Bama really doesn't have a confident running back in the red zone yet. I sort of noticed that, once they got down in distance to the goal line, they don't really have a bruiser this year. Jahmyr Gibbs is more of a scat back playmaker type. Trey Sanders is now fourth string. Hard to believe for the former.
No, you're right.
So Jace McClellan, though, keep an eye on him. I think he has a big game Saturday.
The thing you also was very interesting with Alabama, you're right. The run it when they got in the red zone with the run back, and also I feel like they don't really have a established tight end like they've had previously. Like I saw even at the point of attack, sometimes they're trying to seal the edge. Just certain guys just reading here, like they're missing Kamla too right now. Not really that he's your inline blocker, more of a receiving threat, but like the Robbie Outs kid who I'm looking at right now. That's kind of the guy that kind of stood out kind of in an average to below average way this week. It'll be interesting to see, like you said, as they get into the red zone, how that'll affect the run game.
Yeah, Bama's offensive line has to play well too. Texas D-line, from what I saw against ULM last week, played a little bit better than I expected. Texas' strength of that defense obviously is those 3 or 4 linebackers that come off the field at the same time. So I'm looking forward to seeing that game. And the biggest key for me, Texas must stay in that game in the first half.
Survive the storm, yeah.
Anytime you play top-ranked Bama in a showdown Saturday type game, you can't fall behind 21-0 9 minutes in. You can't let Trayshawn Holden get loose for a 75-yard pass over the middle touchdown. I mean, Texas has to tackle well, and like I said, those first few possessions, they got to move some chains.
No, you're 100% right. So tell me a little bit, what are you looking forward to seeing in the Tennessee at Pittsburgh game Saturday as well?
Yeah, Tennessee Pitt, this will be the first time really since the Purdue bowl game that maybe Tennessee is going to be challenged. Obviously, Tennessee had its way with Purdue. Purdue had its way with Tennessee defensively as well. And this is a Pitt team that I like what I saw against West Virginia. I do worry, if I'm a Pitt fan, though, that, how well is Pitt going to be able to move the ball or really keep up with Tennessee if they're able to average, 2.75, 3 plays per minute like they were last season. Josh Heupel, he went tempo against Ball State, but didn't really have to, much of that game. And Hendon Hooker's a guy that I had ranked, right behind Bryce Young as the second best quarterback in the SEC this summer. So looking forward to seeing Hendon Hooker play against a decent front seven. And Pitt's got 2 or 3 guys on that D-line, man, who are going to be, 2023 NFL draft picks. So this is a really good SEC warm-up type game for Tennessee.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to seeing that one too. Got to ask you, Brad, does it feel like there is a big drop-off? I know it's early, overreaction Tuesday it is right now. Does it feel like, I'm asking you nationally right now, I feel like everybody would agree in conference, but does it just feel like it's Alabama and Georgia and then there's a gap and then the next, whoever you want to sprinkle in there, Oklahoma, Clemson, Ohio State, whoever it may be?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a handful of teams, maybe 4 or 5 right now, who I could see potentially winning a title this season. And then from pretty much 6 to 20, we're talking about probably 3 to 7 point spreads for all those teams. I think Clemson, after seeing them last night, I really thought the Tigers offense would have made some sort of leap and bound improvement this offseason, but Uiagalelei played inconsistent, so-so in that first half. Really threw some dimes in the second half that were dropped. He had that one to Bo Collins on the right sideline, right in the red basket, but it was dropped. Clemson's a team that I had in my Final Four in the preseason. And then Michigan. I watched that entire Michigan-Colorado State game, and despite losing Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, Daxon Hill, 3 early-round NFL draft guys, that defense looks really good. And I think Michigan is going to sort of lean on that front seven defensively this season. And they got one of the best quarterback rooms in the in the Big Ten, not named Ohio State. So Michigan and Ohio State are going to be 2 playoff threats as well.
Awesome. Nope, totally agree with you. I think there's a gap there, just in my opinion. Everybody else, like you said, you named it all. I don't have to get into it. Let's move on to why we brought you on, all your knowledge, but I feel like you have a good grasp on the South Carolina program. Just give me some keys to the game as we roll into that early kick in Fayetteville this Saturday.
Yeah, I think South Carolina's offensive line is a big weakness right now, and that's where I see Arkansas. One of my early picks this week was Arkansas covering this game by 8. I thought the spread would be about 6.5 to 7 this summer, and then judging by the two performances last week from the Hogs and Gamecocks, I thought this line might open up to about 13.5, 14 points. But South Carolina's offense, it was sort of middle of the road against Georgia State. I think the Gamecocks knew that it was going to be a challenge up front against Georgia State based on how they align. They got very good veteran leadership on that defense, some really good linebackers. But Gamecocks averaged 3 yards a carry against a, G5 program.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas's front seven is a whole lot better than Georgia State with, Bama transfer, Drew Sanders, some of those guys there. So I think it's very key for South Carolina. Last week they had 21 plays of negative or 0 yardage, 21 snaps. That can't happen against Arkansas and win that game on the road. So Spencer Rattler has to play better. I think Gamecocks pass protection has to be, light years better than it was. And then on the Arkansas side, KJ Jefferson, that rushing attack, it's facing a defense that's one of the SEC's most underrated.
Mm-hmm.
Gamecocks, I think, forced 7 3-and-outs in that opener. Some really solid stuff from Clayton White's group. So I think you're going to kind of see an ugly, low-scoring game, man. If I had to make a pick in this game, I'd probably bet the under.
So what is, in your opinion, what is the issue at offensive line right now? I said there's a lot of experience back. Is it just there's just not a lot of good players? You think, does it kind of go back to the previous and the Muschamp years of kind of just some misses?
Yeah, and in the Gamecocks 2023 cycle right now, I think there's 9 4-stars for Shane Beamer. That class is number 15 in the country, according to our rankings. And like 5 or 6 of those guys are O-linemen. So they got some help on the way in, but this year they're going to have to get more creative on offense. You've got to find ways to, get Jaheim Bell the ball. DeCarrion Joyner, who was the quarterback in the bowl game last season, did not play last week. He's going to start this week at wide receiver. So I think it'll be interesting to see if the Gamecocks can get, Bell, DeCarrion Joyner, Josh Van, some of those guys some early touches.
And Stogner was kind of quiet this past weekend too, wasn't
he? They went twin tight end a lot, but didn't have a ton of targets for Austin Stogner, the transfer from OU.
So what's kind of the feel right now? Because I've talked to a couple of my buddies who work there, but what is kind of the feel around that program, you think, right now from a Marcus Satterfield standpoint? Are people frustrated? You think it's more offensive line like we just talked about personnel, or you think there is some stuff that could be tweaked a little bit or is going to have to be tweaked, obviously moving here for the next 2 weeks?
Ironically, Shane Beamer, after last season, Gamecocks finished 7-6. He gave raises / extended 8 of his 10 assistants. Marcus Satterfield was not one of those assistants who got extended. So that's a telltale sign that, this is the season it has to happen. He has his quarterback, Spencer Rattler. I've said on the record, on video, stories, podcast, man, that this is the most talented quarterback South Carolina has had in program history, or at least, since I followed him since the mid-90s. So this guy has NFL arm talent, and you have to take advantage of that. The one thing I will say about Spencer Rattler as it relates to Marcus Satterfield's offense, Spencer is a very rhythmic quarterback. He needs 4 or 5 straight completions to open a game to kind of get his feet under him and find his rhythm. You see some of his best games at Oklahoma. That's what he did. Oklahoma did a ton of tunnel screens, bubble screens under Lincoln Riley and kind of got him hot. Marcus Satterfield didn't do a ton of that in the season opener, so that was kind of surprising. But this zone blocking scheme that Gamecocks have in the run game, it just doesn't seem to work. And Gamecocks have talent in that backfield. So I think you're going to see more creativity this week and ways to, Gamecock staff know the offensive line has underperformed a bit, so they are going to have to get creative with that game plan.
So that being said, I can tell you like Arkansas here. You obviously talked about the points. What's a final you got for us here?
Yeah, I think it's a 24-10 type game. Like I said, man, really low scoring. I don't think Sam Pittman's a guy who's going to rub it in Beamer's face. Sam and Shane actually hung out a little bit in Atlanta at media days. Those 2 guys are real good friends. And, Sam said on the record how much he likes Shane and respects him. So these are 2 coaches. Shane's in his 2nd year, Sam Pittman 3rd, that there's a lot of momentum behind these 2 programs. Really good off seasons for both. both coaches weren't afraid to tap the transfer portal for, instant talent, instant starters. So I think you'll see a competitive game, maybe an ugly game. And I just think Arkansas is better right now at the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely. No, this is a big week for the conference, in my opinion. I had a little segment here back in the summer that was like domino games, top 5 games in the conference that no one was really talking about, like not the Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Alabama, et cetera, the ones we're used to. But 2 of them were 1 and 2 for me this week. It was this one, it was South Carolina at Arkansas, and it was Kentucky at Florida. Just happened to be week 2. I think they're 2 humongous games that kind of springboard the winner, especially if it's a South Carolina who can roll into Williams-Brice Stadium next week and undefeated against obviously a first or second ranked Alabama. And then obviously Kentucky is going to go compete for that. I feel like the winner of this Kentucky-Florida game is literally in the driver's seat to finish second in the East.
I was going to say, man, the narrative surrounding this game and in the Swamp on Saturday has changed so much just from, mid-August to now. Here I am not knowing UK was going to have so many suspensions. Mark Stoops told us a month ago that Chris Rodriguez was good. He's going to play. Now he might miss a quarter or half of the season. And we're talking about probably the best SEC running back to return this fall. So UK is a team that's sort of a mystery to me right now. Didn't play all that well against Miami of Ohio. Will Levis is a guy that I think really can be a first-round pick at quarterback for them in next year's draft. But, Levis versus Anthony Richardson, Florida's a team that, if they win Saturday night, they're going to beat USF the following week. And then we're talking about possibly 2 top 15 teams in Knoxville and Neyland Stadium to end September, Florida at Tennessee. For really the winner of that game is in the driver's seat to Georgia for the East.
Absolutely. Well, brother, I appreciate you joining us tonight. I know you could be doing a lot of other things, but I appreciate you hopping on with us at Mach 10 Sports. Brad, just everybody that's listening to this interview, go follow Brad Brad, if you want to tell him your Twitter handle so everybody can go follow you. Does great stuff on CBS Sports Network, 247. I follow him all the time, listen to his interviews, gives great insight on the game and programs around the country.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. B. Crawford 247 on Twitter. Also have a Christian-based podcast coming out soon, sort of outside of sports on my own accord. So looking forward to that.
Well, I appreciate you getting on, Brad. Thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
Keep following us on Mach 10 Sports for the best information on SEC sports.